I first met Srila Prabhupada in Atlanta, Georgia. That was in February 1975, and it was during the time of Prabhupada's honoring Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance day. And I saw him first. It was in the evening. There was a large gathering of devotees in the temple room in Atlanta. And it was a very special energy there. Of course, I was astounded by Prabhupada's size. He wasn't very tall, because in the pictures that you see of him, everything's humongous in a way. His eyes, the stretch of his mouth, and his earlobes come down quite big. And when you heard a recording of his voice, it was quite strong and baritonish, I guess. And so you had this image of a very big man. So now you see him, and well, he's just a small person, with a big message. And it was unique because Prabhupada taught us the bhajan by Lochana Das Thakur, Parama Karuna. There's a beautiful song highlighting the two lords, Chaitanya and Nityananda, and what they had come here for. And what did they come here for? To establish a party, an eternal party, having a good time, and at the same time being spiritual about it. So that was very significant. Srila Prabhupada also played the mridanga for us, which was very rare in those days. He gave a lot of mercy. The second, some other instances during that time, Srila Prabhupada watched a drama by our devotees. There was this episode of Chaitanya meeting the Muslim leader Chandkazi. And you couldn't help but kind of like look back and see, I'm a spectator, and I'm sort of looking back at Prabhupada, who's also a spectator, and I'm seeing that he's enjoying this very much. He really loves he enjoyed the fact that Krishna consciousness can be projected, through entertainment. So that was significant for me. There was a kirtan also that was held, and I recall many devotees were chanting near the deities. Prabhupada sat on his Vyasasan in the temple room, and there was one fellow who was a little bit frivolous. He had the drum, he was playing the mridanga, and he sort of projected it forward and let it come back and bounce off his belly. And in this way, it was going back and forth. He was rather close to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada sort of looked his way towards the mridanga player and gave sort of a sour look, and as if to say, "What are you doing?" And it's not. I think Prabhupada appreciated frivolity to some extent, but if it goes a little overboard, then it wasn't so acceptable for him. I had the good pleasure also of being on the morning walk with Srila Prabhupada in Atlanta, and it was quite a frigid day, even for myself being a Nordic person from Canada. Prabhupada was very resilient, it appeared, and he was very well dressed. And he moved along, and the group of Vaishnavas that were with him were really attentive, and I guess I was one of those persons trying to be very attentive. So I kept my ear in the direction to where his voice was coming from. I couldn't decipher very well what he was saying, but I was so fixated on trying to be there and catch every word. I really wasn't watching where I was going. And so suddenly I hit this lamppost, like a metal lamppost, and it made this incredible loud twang noise, and it vibrated like anything. And my companion, who was my Sankirtan leader, Giri Jadava Prabhu, he heard the sound. He looked back at me, he goes, "Shh," like this. I was just thinking, well, what about me? I'm in pain. A bump showed up on the forehead here like that. And I guess the lesson that I got out of that is that everyone was really attentive to Prabhupada, and nothing else really mattered. And on another morning walk, which was along Lake Michigan at a park, with Prabhupada and a host of other devotees, God brothers, some who had who had taken sannyas. They had their dandas and everything. So I was walking along, straggling along a little behind, not important enough to be too close. And there was this cyclist who came along, and he stopped right in front of me. He was like maybe 3 yards away from me. And it was an abrupt stop. And he asked for some attention. He said, "Excuse me." And it wasn't to me, it wasn't directed to me. It was more directed to the devotees who were huddled around Prabhupada. And so he asked the simple question, why is it that some of you are carrying sticks and others are not? That was the simple question. And devotees just kind of went for a silent moment or two, and they waited for Prabhupada to give a reply. Prabhupada had stopped at that point, and everyone else did. You know, he'd move, he'd stop. Everyone would stop, and then he'd move, and everyone moved. It was like that. So Prabhupada didn't really understand the question so well. He just went to Brahmananda, sort of turned his head over to Brahmananda and said, "What did he say?" And then Brahmananda's interpretation of that question was, he wants to know why we carry the sticks, Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada thought about it for a second. He said, "Tell him they are there to shoo away the dogs." So that was the response that got back to him. The fellow heard it. So I was very close to him, the cyclist that is. And at that, his remark was, as a follow-up, well, ask a stupid question, you get a stupid answer. And I just remember saying to him, "Oh, it wasn't a stupid question. You just talked to somebody who's very special right now." That was it. So I was on a walk once again in Chicago, and there were, I'd say, fewer people on that morning walk. Beautiful sunny day by Lake Michigan. And we walked along a trail and then came to the end of the park. There was some foliage, you know, some trees, and I think even like a stone wall. So obviously we couldn't go any further, and we had to turn back and around. So it was decided that Vishaka, the photographer, would take a picture. That it just looked really nice. Prabhupada had like a gray chadar, and Brahmananda was there, and there were a few more people. And so it was decided this would be like an iconic kind of, you know, beautifully framed photo of His Divine Grace. So Brahmananda came and just kind of helped out a little bit in his own way. He was trying to help a little bit with the folds of the chadar to see it would fall nice. And then a second devotee came along and suggested Prabhupada should switch a little bit, you know, get the right angle. Vishaka, being the photographer, also came a little bit and offered some suggestions. And then, you know, person number 2 came back in. There was a little bit of a muss and fuss, you know. And Prabhupada was, he didn't accept the confusion, but he did say that, "Oh, I'm just going to stay here like this now, you know." And he said, "You cannot satisfy all of the people all of the time." And he had this big smile, and that was it. It's like one of those classic phrases, you can't satisfy all of the people all of the time, which is definitely the case for if you're a leader or you're parenting, or, you know, it's just the way of the world. Of everyone's got their own individual take on things, and so just be satisfied pretty much what's there. So it came across as a moment of a very profound statement, and very applicable to most circumstances. So there's usually Prabhupada is projected as being a very stern-looking kind of master, and very rigid. You know, some of even his chosen photos, visages of himself, would project that. But my little experience with Prabhupada is that He was quite human, and he loved to throw a little joke out there, slip out a little remark of wit that would lighten the atmosphere, you know. So I thought that that was very significant. Just because you have a master, it doesn't mean that there has to be all this incredible rigidity. It's a little bit more about, you know, being human and being light and carrying on in life in a way that makes it not so cumbersome or burdensome. I think that's really important. And Prabhupada was able to provide that with his remarks, what he had to say and do. I had the pleasure to attend the Sunday program in Detroit, Michigan, when that rented building was there on Jefferson Avenue. And it was a Sunday afternoon. I worked really hard as a brahmachari. I attended the program. I was just a few feet away from Prabhupada's Vyasa-san, where he was speaking. I was able to capture a real nice profile of him, you know, based on where I was seated. And I was really exhausted physically, and I was nodding out, I have to say. I was just, you know, how could I go through this? What a sinful, inattentive wretch you are, Bhaktimarga. You know? And I remember waking up at certain points and said, oh, how can I doze off in front of such a luminary? And we're coming to the tail end of the Sunday feast, you know, lecture, Prabhupada's class. And the only thing that I can remember that he said, because I did have sometimes struggled with his accent, it was like this. He held up his finger like this. And if I can get the angle for you, he said, do not be proud. So that's what stuck in my head. And that's all I had to hear. That was all. It was like a half-hour discourse. That's all I needed to hear. That's it. Finished and good enough. It was Prabhupada's second visit to Toronto. He was very thrilled and happy about the fact that we acquired that large limestone building, which was a former church, and on a major thoroughfare coming into the city of Toronto. It was a milestone for us, for the movement in North America in particular. Large temple room, it had all the features that you could ever ask for, and in a real nice neighborhood. So Prabhupada was very happy about us achieving that, of course, with his prayers and his blessings. So everyone was very excited about his second visit now. We were out of a, you know, sort of downtrodden, rented house, and now we've got this almost like a palace, what was like a palace to us. And us being all youthful and, let's say, thinking from the point of view of, you know, what young men require young women, it came to the point where we had this quarters where what was the rectory before, and now Prabhupada would be occupying the place with a washroom, and then there's a bedroom, there's even like a meeting room in the middle, and then there's also like a servant's quarters with like a little kitchenette and everything like that. So now everyone was thinking, well, Prabhupada's Vedic and he's from India. And in India, the toilets, they don't have seats like Western seats. So we'll make it as Vedic as possible. We'll take off the toilet seat and then he'll feel right at home. Okay, so Prabhupada comes in, he's looking around at, you know, his facility, and then he's shown the washroom, or what you call a restroom, and he looks at the toilet, and the seat is missing, and he talks to the administrator, temple president. He says, "How can I go?" So simply like that. So maybe from an old person's point of view, you know, you need extra facility, extra help. But from our point of view, we're just thinking that, oh, this is what Prabhupada would like best. Let's do it like they do in India, you know. So there are a few things that we had to learn from those little, let's say, mistakes that were made, misjudgments, miscalculations. Srila Prabhupada was giving morning classes in Toronto, and there was quite a surge of interest from traveling devotees in different parts of North America. And there was a very nice turnout for those classes in the morning. I can't exactly remember which class it came from, which portion of the Bhagavatam, but it's a very simple thing. There was one of our brahmacharis was doing a little bit of stretching exercises during the course of Prabhupada's talk. He was just like turning his body, twisting his body like this. I guess just things were getting a little stiff for him. So he did a little bit of this, he did a little bit of that. And then Prabhupada picked on it right away. Everyone else was sitting like still, and this person was, standing out like a sore thumb. And then Prabhupada made a remark right in the middle, a comment right in the middle of the class, said, "Don't do this." So from that I gleaned that Prabhupada wanted attentiveness. He wanted attention from all of us and to not let anything slip by. I talked to the devotee after who was the guilty party. He didn't feel very good on the one hand, but maybe there was a little ambivalence. He felt, I got the sauce from Prabhupada, I got some chastisement. That makes me feel pretty good. I got singled out, and that's oftentimes the case, what happened for people. If someone was, let's say, just noticed a little bit, a little notice by Prabhupada, and you felt really good. So Srila Prabhupada was sitting in the sitting room area, a second story to our new building on Avenue Road in Toronto. And there were some university professors there, a Dr. Shiva Raman, who was from McMaster University, and a few others. And amongst them was Professor Joseph T. O'Connell, who had been a great supporter of ISKCON during our troubling times of the anti-cult days, you can say, deprogramming times. He was a great man. And he asked the question to Srila Prabhupada about, are there any female gurus in our tradition? And Srila Prabhupada's answer was very simply, yes, there are some. Well, there are some few, but there are some. And then the example was cited of Nityananda's wife, Janavi Devi, and that was pretty much about it. So just the fact that Prabhupada accepted that this is a reality in our tradition, that perhaps this is something that we should take up seriously. And Krishna consciousness movement might be a little bit of a controversial topic, but since the master gave the okay, the green light at that instance, and other let's say, indications by Prabhupada's letters would point in that direction, that it's fine to have those who are qualified, regardless of gender, could take up this particular role and responsibility for the sake of expanding the Krishna consciousness movement. So it happened right there in the facility. And I have the good fortune of staying in that room where he said that classic, gave that classic answer. I think I just go back to the point that while he was a scholar, while he was able to deliver so much wisdom and quote shlokas from so many different sources, he was still very human. And I think that's really important, because we sometimes get so enwrapped in rules and regulations that everything becomes rather bland and cold even. So that sort of warm side of him, which we read about from some of the biographers, helps us to, it sheds new light on us. And from what I could also see, yes, here's a person who's above us all in many aspects, but also very much with his feet on the ground. And I think that's important for devotees to catch up on, that we can't have our heads in the sky too much, in the clouds, so to speak, but to be very, real with people and very caring and get down to simple terms and try not to be too lofty or too philosophical. There's times to just, how are you doing? How's your family? How's your health? Be concerned about the person. I think that's personalism. So of all the qualities that come to my mind about Prabhupada's persona is his being very personal.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu